Hey, good evening, folks. I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight. This is an event that I have been looking forward to for many months now. I first met Justin Anderson and Greg Montgomery in Phoenix when I attended the National Planning Conference hosted by the American Planning Association. And, out of the hundreds of sessions that the planning conference held and the many dozens that I attended, I walked away with their presentation just burned in my mind. It was an incredible presentation about the story of Ogden's transformation from sort of a down-and-out community to a national star child in the planning arena. And I won't take too much time tonight because we're all here to hear what Greg and Justin have to say. But I am really happy to see so many people here. It's really a testament to how invested each of you are in the future of Moab's community. Before we get going, it should be known that this presentation has been arranged by two very important community organizations, SEES and the Grand County League of Women Voters. For those of you that don't know, SEES, which stands for Citizens for Community Collaboration, is a sponsored project of the Utah Natural Heritage Fund, which is a part of the Community Foundation of Utah. It's solely the work of Bill Topper and Dave McLean, very committed citizens in our community. SEE's mission is to increase understanding, cooperation, and collaboration among the wonderfully diverse organizations and individuals in our community. SEES is autonomous and nonpartisan. The SEES website is www.seesmoab.org, and that is SEES Moab.org. The League of Women Voters of Grand County is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government and promotes understanding of major public policy issues through educational programs and advocacy. The League would like to invite you to attend their 36th Annual Candidates Forum, which will take place on September 28th at 7 p.m. at the Grand Center. The event will be followed by a reception with the candidates with refreshments served. Questions will be asked of the 8 Grand County Council candidates, 5 state candidates, and school board. The presentation will also include an explanation of the 2 ballot initiatives, Prop 3, which is a sales tax for the healthcare district, and Prop 4, which is a Grand County school levy. So without further ado, I will introduce Greg Montgomery first, and Greg will speak for 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have a very short intermission, and then Justin will speak, and after their presentations, we'll have a question and answer period.
Appreciate that. And just on behalf of just myself, just thank you citizens of Moab, because we've been here today. This has been a warm welcome. We've been very comfortable here, and that says a lot about your community. We just really appreciate that, to be able to share some things that we may have learned along the way that you might be able to use as you face challenges in your community. And for just a little background, I've been with Ogden City for 33 years. So I've been to see some of the bad times and some of the good times that are taking place now. I'm a 5th generation person from Weber County and up there in northern Utah. So as you know, we've been there all since the beginning of the development of Weber County. And the things that I'd like to share with you tonight, hopefully can give you some ideas that you can take. Let me just get this going here, and we'll start. So I want to start off with a couple of Moab stories that introduced me to Moab. My wife and I, she introduced me to Moab. She had come down here from a university geology class. She said, we've got to go here. So once we were married, we came down here. I'm not showing that picture because I look different then. But we came back again when our kids were young. These are my 2 oldest boys. Well, I have a total of 4 children, but my 2 oldest boys when we came down this time, my wife called this the Death March because we had the two boys. I had a little girl in my backpack. It was 105 because we went to Delicate Arch. And she said, you know, what are you doing? Why don't you love us? And I said, oh, this will be fine. We'll be okay. Well, you see, we made it to the arch, and they're happy and smiling. That night, we were camping over, I think, the bend on the BLM side over there on the river. We're in our tent, quiet, and all of a sudden I just hear this noise. I thought, what is going on? It's quiet. It should be quiet. That. And I opened up the tent. I got out. I was in my underwear. And I got out, and I heard this microphone going on, talking about the views on the wall. Also, the spotlight swung around to where I was in the tent. I hit the ground, so they could not see me. I dug in the sand. Okay, I hide it. Spotlight moved on, and that was my first real introduction to Moab. Well, from there, I thought, okay, I'm going to bring things back. So now these are my two boys. One in the yellow is the one with the hat, the little boy. The other boy with the black hat is the one without the hat. So two sons and some other scouts and friends came down here, and this is on top of Jimmy Ridge, and we went biking and introduced them to Moab. And it's come full circle now that I've got my grandkids that we come down here and take them to experience the wonderful things you have in Moab. And you do have just a wonderful, wonderful area here. So many things to offer. A little bit about Ogden. Just in case you don't know where we're at, we're about 40 miles north of Salt Lake. 269 miles away. Elevation, not much different. We're 272 feet higher. Population, a little bit different, 84,000 people. And 27 square miles. But like you, we are landlocked. We have nowhere to move. All the other communities around us come to our borders, so we have no room for expansion. And some of the things we're talking about today is what we had to deal with when you can't expand anymore. How do you work around the situations you have? Ogden was the first European settlement in the Intermountain West. Founded in 1845 by Miles Goodyear. He created a kind of a way station for future travelers who'd be going to California. He built Fort Ventura, and that's his cabin. We still have it preserved today. Of course, Ogden developed as any Western community did. Basically, we were agriculture to begin with, and then things picked up. This is Washington Boulevard, Highway 89. This is the main thoroughfare from Canada to Mexico. Came through the center of Ogden. You can see in this 1920 picture of Ogden, just the bustle of that. But all of that we attributed to one thing, and that was the Transcontinental Railroad. Ogden became known as the Junction City. Union Pacific, Central Pacific, they all met in Ogden. And when you were a traveler at that time, it wasn't like you just changed trains. Central Pacific had their line, Union Pacific had their line, schedule did not meet. So Ogden had to become the hospitality spot for anyone traveling east or west of the United States because of the way the railroad system worked at that time. And so they had to stay over. And that created the development that took place in Ogden that really spurred development going on. Today, these banners talk a little bit about what Ogden's about. 230 miles of trails, 18 art galleries, independent retailers, that's both shopping and restaurants, independent restaurants, historic sites, 63 national historic sites, and of course skiing. 10,000 acres with Powder Mountain, Snow Basin, Nordic Valley, those ski resorts within 20 minutes from Ogden. Famous citizens. First of all, it started with John Browning, Browning Arms, Browning Sporting Goods. That was also followed off by Utah Construction, the Wattis family. Utah Construction was the people who built Hoover Dam. They dredged the bay and made Alameda in San Francisco Bay. Their merger with GE in the 1960s was the largest merger in the United States at that point in time. And it all started as an Ogden-based company, the Utah Construction. Mariner Eccles, he was the chairman of the Federal Reserve during the FDR administration, another Ogden resident. Even the Osmonds started in Ogden. Their home now is Home Depot. But that shows you how much we thought about that. But they were from Ogden. And then Damian Lillard is our latest product. Even though he was born in Oakland, I like the story he tells. The reason his number is 0, he was born in Oakland. He got his basketball start in Ogden, playing for Weber State, and now he is in Oregon. So the O represents those 3 O's: Oakland, Ogden, and Oregon. Recently, we've received different attention, both from places to live. Newsweek last year did an article about the wealth gap and the fact that Ogden is one of the most affordable places to live. In 2014, we received an award from the Planning Association for Great Streets in America for our 25th Street, and different magazines such as Powder Magazine. But Moab itself also has a lot of attention. Whether you like it or not, you are the symbol of the state. You know, you look at Utah, you look at the coin, it is Moab area. The Olympics started off here. And all the creations that take place. I like to show this picture going up to the Delicate Arch. When I first did it, you knew the way to the arch because there were cairns along the way. Now they're just people along the way. So now you know, okay, which way to get arch, just follow people. But that popularity and the reason you're here is because you really do represent Utah. Our license plate, the coins, the stamp for the centennial, all of that. Let me give you a comparison between Ogden and Moab. So, people per square mile. You see we're a little bit denser. 3,000 people per square mile versus the 1,200 in Moab. Our average age is 30, yours is 39.8. This is, again, according to census numbers. Owner occupancy, 54% in Ogden, 60% in Moab. Household size, 2.85, 2.28. Real difference you see is the median value of owner-occupied homes. There's a big difference between Moab and here in terms of housing affordability. And per capita income, you also see there's a big difference in that. 19,000 versus 23. People below poverty level in Ogden, 23% versus 14 here. Our housing stock is much older too, beginning with why we were formed back in 1851. And the majority of the houses being over 50 years of age. And our ethnic makeup, 63% white compared to 86 here in Moab. And we've seen changes. You see the 29% Hispanic number in Ogden. Years ago, it was African American. We had a large population of African American because of the railroad. The porters and waiters, all those who worked on the railroad. Ogden was the place that the African Americans had a place to be. It was part of they were part of our community, which is very unusual for Utah, which made us very diverse from other places in Utah. It gave us kind of that renegade status that many people think of Ogden. And you've seen that population shift in that minority background, changing from African American to Hispanic now. What happened to Ogden was that transformation we call urban flight. During the heyday, Ogden was 70% of total Weber County's population. Now we're only 35% of that population of the county. And so we have that flight lead. Weber County has a population of about 230,000 people. And so while population-wise, it dispersed out of the community, we're still 80% of the employment of the county. And so it creates some new dynamics we had to deal with. And our population, so it declined from 1960 to 1990. We were going down every 10 years, the population. So we got to 61,000. We were 70,000 in 1960. We were 61,000 in 1990. And so we had that decline taking place. And you can see that decline took place also in the appearance of the community. A couple of pictures, one from Kiesel Avenue, just showing kind of the rundown appearance. Building on 25th Street back in the 1970s. Again, broken out windows and that appearance of no one cares about this community. And that affected our image of what people really thought about us, even our own citizens, most importantly, of how they looked at us. Anything we tried to do, they thought, okay, it's not going to work. Nothing ever good nothing good will ever happen here. It's just not going to make it. In fact, our image became such that it was a rough and tumble place. Because of that declining population and the low income levels, this became an opportunity for group homes, for people making transitions from halfway houses. All sorts of housing was bought up by those elements of society that did help give us a good impression, that made people wonder, why do I want to live in this community? And we had to deal with that image. In fact, this is kind of Ogden's morale. You know, nothing is going to happen good in Ogden. We missed the boat on everything. And so that's how people thought about it. That's how the citizens felt. If it's good, it's not going to happen here. So we had to do some shifting. And now, I don't know how many of you are football fans. Of course, this next one kind of divides Utah when I show this picture of Lavelle Edwards. But the point he's making here is dealing with how do we perceive ourselves, that we can get a self-fulfilling prophecy that we can't do anything because of this or because of that. And Lavelle Edwards said that the first thing he had to do when he took over as head coach, he had to change the philosophy and mentality of his coaches. Because his coaches were always given excuses why we cannot perform, why we cannot do anything. He said, I couldn't do anything about the things I can't change. But what I could do is change the attitude and deal with the things we do have. And how do we build upon them? And that became one of the very first things we had to work on in Ogden, to change the way we viewed ourselves. To look at the things that, as we have new people move into the community, they talk about how great it is. Some people use, you've got good bones. The idea that you've got the structure there to build something great with because of what was set down early on. You've just got to work with those bones and develop something from that and realize you can do that. I like this comment in the Old Testament Proverbs, where there is no vision, the people perish. And if you never have an idea of what you can become, you never set forward to do anything about it. You just feel, well, whatever happens will happen. If you don't see where you can go, you never put the effort to move forward. And those are the things that we had to do to start off with plans. Now, this picture on the right was a 1929 plan of what they thought Ogden would become. And at that time, it was in Ogden's heyday. They talked about this massive train station at the bottom of the picture, going up a boulevard to the high school at the end of the boulevard, the other side, with parks and businesses on either side of it. And they said, the heading says, why not now? Why can't we do this now? And that was kind of the attitude. And then, of course, when they said you had to decline things, people lost that idea. But the plans, they can inspire, they can give us our real potential, and they can be something we aim towards. And they can create opportunities, but they're only as good as implementation, and only as good as what people believe can happen. I like to use these two pictures now. Dating myself, the Redstone rocket, first American in space, Alan Shepard. It was an old military rocket, and they put a mercury capsule on it for the idea to get him into suborbital, let him spend 15 minutes and come down. Didn't have a lot of thrust to it. But eventually it was developed into the Saturn V, which sent men to the moon. But you had to do a lot of things to break gravity. You had to exert a lot of effort. And I think one of the key things about this is where are we trying to go? And depending on where we're trying to go is how much effort are we going to put into it. Sometimes we can say, well, I'll make a show. I'll just do a little bit. And it doesn't get you much. The effort you put into something really becomes important. Now, take a note of this next slide with me. There's a soundtrack to it. And notice what happens. Okay, what did you notice in that? This is the last test shuttle booster launch, test of the shuttle booster in 2010. at ATK Proving Grounds, which is about 40 miles north of Ogden. And you hear the school children in the background counting down. There's a big screen there with the numbers counting down. All of a sudden you just saw the booster ignite, big flame, everyone talking, cheering. And then all of a sudden the impact of the sound of the thrust came, and it would hit you, and you could actually feel it. It just vibrates your body. And I think from that, there's a lesson we learn. And when we get involved in plans, and we get involved in the community, there's a lot of cheering, excitement, and everything else as you see the flash. But then what happens when you actually see it implemented? When you actually see things you're planning take place, and you start to feel it because it's now going on. You have a whole different respect for what now is taking place in your community. And I think that's one of those things that little strip shows. One of the things we had to deal with was people saying, well, why can't you take Ogden back to its heyday? Let's go back to the 1950s. Why can't you make it like that? Well, this is why you couldn't do it. This is an article in Scientific America, 1955. This is projecting what the home computer of 2004 will look like. Now, do anyone of you have one of these in your home? You think about what they thought could take place. And of course, if you read the bottom part, they said, of course, this is assuming something will be done to do computer language that isn't even in existence yet to make this possible. How many of you ever took Fortran in college? How useful is that now? You look at what's taken place in technology, the way we perceive things, and that's why we can't ever go back to the way it was. The world has changed so much, and how we do things, how we perceive things, how we share information, things that we could never even perceive of back then are now taking place. I remember my son the other day was talking about he's one to give those fancy little counters now that actually has a phone in the wristwatch. That was Dick Tracy. That was a cartoon. That wasn't ever going to happen. And now, as you see things take place, we think, well, why can't we ever go back to the way it used to be? I love the old days. Why can't we do that? We can't because things have changed. The dynamics have changed. And if we're going to move forward and advance, both in how we look at our community and do different things, we've got to realize we've got to understand the changes that take place and how to apply them. One of the things that took place in Ogden is we sold ourselves out for a lot of years. This map shows the downtown Ogden in 1949. Red is buildings. 2007, you notice the lack of buildings. And what we did to ourselves was a couple things. We looked at our zoning only in terms of density, but not what it could achieve. And as we used the regulations we had, it gave us results we didn't want. We ignored the context of the place and what we had to offer. The great infrastructure was built in the turn of the century and up to the 1930s. We ignored that sense of place that was created and thought, oh, there's always going to be something better. We don't have to pay attention to what we have. And a matter of convenience took place. We tore down over 1 million square feet of buildings to make more parking lots. At 1960, kind of the end of the heyday, we had 3,500 parking lots. Today we have 18,000 parking stalls and 1 million square feet less of space, of office space or retail space. We made convenience more important than the sense of place. And those are things that we're starting to learn from. One of the things we did, we chased after the dollar in terms of just retail only. So we tore down 2 blocks of central downtown, right on Washington Boulevard, to develop a fortress called the Ogden City Mall. And so we cleared out the 2 blocks and cut the streets off. We built a 3,000 stall parking structure, which was free, which then drove out any competing retail businesses that did parking as their business. All those paid parking lots we drove out because now we offered free parking. We took out that segment of the community. All because we were fearful that if we didn't do this, people would take their tax dollars somewhere else. And so we really messed up our system. That map on the right showing our resident population downtown. You see the little blocks there. The tallest block was the county jail. That was the most downtown population we had, was the jail. We drove out downtown population. We said, okay, it's just as Rico. People don't belong at night downtown. Fatal mistake. And the jail was a fatal mistake because the pressure was, it's land already owned by the public. And even though, as I'll show you in a little bit, it was a great public space, we decided to put a jail in the middle of the public space. Because of the pressure, it's free, it's easy, it's quick. We don't want to go plan a jail for some other location where it may be more appropriate. It's easy, let's put it here. Then started the idea of we've got to take back the city. We've got to think what we're doing. And we start off with some key concepts about what we call the triangle. Union Station at one end, the municipal block at the other end, and then our retail component at another to make this triangle-shaped space that's walkable within easy distance of each other, that can thrive off each other in different activities there, and then start to create population base. Well, it wasn't easy, but I'll talk about the three legs we did. One, 25th Street. So this shows 25th Street as the railroad starts to come in. It's vacant lots, and you start to see some businesses come in, streetcar to move people up and down. And you got to remember back at that time, the only modes of transportation were generally horse or foot. The introduction of the streetcar was something new to move people in and out, and it became a development tool in the community. By 1900, you see how the street is developed from that same location, and the buildings fill out. Hotels being along that, because again, it's next to the station. Those overnight people waiting for the other trains, place to stay. But by the 1950s, 25th Street went into a decline. Now, 25th Street always had this reputation of this is the place that is the mingling of all the cultures. And with that also became the mingling of all the vices. There was prostitution, it was gambling, it was opium dens. There's all those types of things that were taking place. And by the 50s, all that was left was the bars and the taverns. And in Ogden itself, this was a place you avoided. You only went to 25th Street as high school kids at nighttime to dare each other to see, who would watch the first drunk fall down. That was the activity for Friday night. And it got to a point that in 1970, the general plan said, this needs to be scraped, there's no value to this place. Urban renewal needs to take place. So they started. You see the red oval there. Back in 1960, they scraped 3/4 of that one block, thinking that if we take these old buildings down, development will happen. That sat vacant for 50 years. From 1960 till 2000, that sat vacant. No one would dare touch that space, again, because of the Revitalization Street. And again, you can see the street view of that area and what it did. This is what 25th Street looked like. Again, this is the reason it's saved. There's no value in this place. When I started with the city, there were 45 buildings on 25th Street. 8 were occupied, and those were bars of the 45 buildings. The city took it upon themselves saying, okay, with the vision that took place with the Junior League, who said, there is something here, we need to restore these buildings. There's too much of history here about who we are, that we can't let it go. They made the push where the politicians and others couldn't, to see something beyond what was just vision right there, to see the potential. Well, the city started with a development plan of, okay, what can we do here? Let's start by putting it on the National Register, document the history of the place. Let's do a redevelopment district. And that building you see in the picture, the center building, we made that our city redevelopment and planning office. Again, at that time, 8 bars, the rest of vacant buildings. The city bought this building and said, we're going to make people come down here if they want to do city business. They have to come to 25th Street if they want to do city business, so they can see what the potential is. So we remodeled our building to be a showcase of what could take place. At the time, when I first started the city, we had some gypsies that lived next to us, and they'd bring their mail to us so we could read it to them and tell them what notices they had. Or the drunk with his Thunderbird would stumble in and, you know, just want to use the restroom, those type of things. That was our clientele to begin with. But eventually people could start to see what could take place because of that building. And we made improvements to the street. We did loans to individuals to rehab those buildings. We encouraged them to get tax credits because, again, it's on the National Register. And started giving them ways to see the ability to finance a project on 25th Street. In the meantime, it became a place for movie spots. Some movies not so good, other movies were okay. We were W30, they ran a series called Everwood. We were Everwood, Colorado. This was the main street of Everwood, Colorado. You know, we were all things to all people. But this is what 25th Street looks like today. Nearly, I think there's only 2 vacant buildings left, fully renovated. This is the restaurant row, this is the activity row, you see the car show, the arts festival. That center picture on the top is that vacant area that I said was vacant for 50 years. We worked with developers to do 4 different projects. And part of those projects were housing. You've got retail on the ground level and housing above it. And people actually live on the street now. They feel safe on the street because there's things to do. There's activities going on. And it's become popular. On the upper right, one of the things Ogden does too, is starts to get people, if we want you to get places, we're going to use art to do it. We have what we call our summer horses. We've got 50 horses that local artists paint and have different businesses sponsor their paintings. And we put those horses all over downtown. We move them around each year to different locations downtown. And it's amazing how many people walk around to try to find the horses each year. And they spend all summer long going up and down, finding the painted horses. But those become some of the things. You see also that little kiosk that explains the history of the street. It tells of the people who lived here. It tells what their life was like. It tells of just all the different things that took place here in Ogden, on 25th Street especially. Lake 2, Municipal Gardens. So this picture on the left shows you the municipal building built in 1939 as it replaced the old building, the old City Hall, which is immediately to the right of that. But you can see on the block is divided into 4 sections. You had the Public Works building, you had the Water Department, the Fire Department. Everybody took a section of the block. And by 1984, the picture on the right shows you that then, as those buildings left, we made more parking lot out of it. And we changed the nature of what that park was to now being more of a parking lot for the municipal building. Well, thank heavens for Dutch elm disease. The garden was full of American elms. And in 1984, the Dutch elm disease came into this area of Utah and started wiping out all the trees. And the Public Works Director, Jay Lau, was then the urban forester. He and I talked about what are we going to do about this space. We're losing all the key trees. And with everything going on, we'll lose what sense of this place used to be. If those are gone, how do we go about it? So we talked about different things that can be done to create this space to be something that could draw the community together rather than just being a municipal function. And over the years, and this took a while, from 1984 to the year 2000, to convince people that this could be more than just a parking lot. So you see, in 2001, the amphitheater was made, took out all the parking, closed off the streets, made a gathering place for the community at the top of 25th Street. Now that place is places of performance, farmers markets. I just took this picture the day before I left. We had the Xterra Games taking place. And so this is the registration spot for the Xterra Games. And all those different things, now this becomes the gathering place. This is where the public comes for different events. And we changed it from a parking lot and roads to this garden, which now is the second key leg of our development. Then the third leg was the mall to the junction. The Washington Boulevard before the Ogden City Mall. You see kind of all the old historic buildings there. Ogden Mall came in, cleared out those 2 blocks, as I mentioned, cleared out 20 acres of downtown to make this fortress. No windows, only 2 entrances off Washington Boulevard for two-block distance. You know, really turned everything inward, and so did not respect all the other businesses, and that led to the other businesses declining because of what we did there. Well, the way the mall was done left a bad taste in the citizens' mouth, because it was just that this is what we're doing. There's really not much public input. It's just saying, we're doing it, this is what's going to happen. We acquired the property, and then over time, all the key anchors left. Nordstrom's, Weinstock, well, some of them, you know, went bankrupt, like Weinstocks, Bon Marché, J.C. Penney's. They all were there to begin with, but then all moved out and left a vacant shell of the building. So the city was left wondering, what do we do with this? So we had to decide to do something. But this time we were going to do it differently. This time we were going to involve everyone, help plan what these 2 blocks should be. We would put out these notices, we put them on billboards on the highway, and would advertise, come help us plan for these 2 blocks. We'd bring in the presidents of the high school. We'd bring in Weber State student presidents. We'd bring in businesses, we'd bring in churches, we'd bring in everyone and have them as focus groups saying, what are the things you think that town needs to have? And we took all that information and then started to get with the consultant to lay it out, say this is what the mall should have. Of course, there were those people who were opposed to it. As this next slide shows, it didn't happen overnight. We found as we dug out and took them all down, contaminants and all sorts of things were buried over originally when the mall was built. They just kind of tore down the old buildings, left foundations and built over it without really taking care of the land underneath. We had people opposing that the mall should not take place, and petitions going on. When a failure would take place, the newspaper would publish it, and some people were glad. See, the city can't do it. That same mentality I talked about was out there. But finally, we got to the point where we got to a plan, we got a partner, a development partner, and we created what's called the Junction. We even had the citizens, the citizens voted on the name. We had a contest, come up with a name for this place. And the Junction is the name that came out. Again, Junction City, the Junction, place of gathering, place of meeting. And it kind of shows you the difference that took place. Retail we knew changed. We couldn't have the retail that once existed. And so the retail component was smaller, but the housing component grew. Because we knew there were opportunities. We need to have people downtown 24 hours a day. This needed to be a place that was always active, always safe. So people would want to be there. And so downtown dwellings took place. So you see on the lower right, storefronts and above the storefronts are 2 levels of apartment buildings above them. And those type of things need to happen. The restaurant courtyard with several restaurants around the green space, creating that type of feeling. And I don't know if when I showed that first picture of Kiesel and the decline of Ogden, that's Kiesel Avenue today on the right side. What it looked like then. Let me just go back and show you quickly. So look at that picture on the right. Yeah. Maybe I'll get to it. There's Kiesel Avenue before. See the difference. One of the things I think is important as you work together as a community and look at the process of how do we get people involved and getting people to discuss to begin with rather than saying, here's a plan, what do you think of it? Because as the Far Side cartoon shows, sometimes we really don't understand how things really are. We perceive it one way, but our results can be catastrophic. We're really not getting other people involved to understand what is in place. And as we get people involved, they have a better buy-in when it comes to implementation. Things we do nowadays, as we talk about community plans in Ogden, we go to the community, first of all, asking these 4 questions. What do you like about your neighborhood? What don't you like about your neighborhood or community? What are the threats or opportunities that you feel are there? And how do you vision your community in 20 years. And we spent that first full day just having that discussion, talk about those things, and then we start to work out, based on those, how we want to approach them. We developed citizens groups to talk about those issues before we ever formulated a plan. Because we've learned from the mall experience, that was something key to take place. If we want buy-in, if we want people to also see the vision, instead of asking, why is the city doing this? Well, now they know why, because they've been involved, and we've talked about the issues and tried to make sense of it. Again, some things that are deterrents: the median household income, home value, below poverty level. We have 90% of the county's low-income housing. We have an excess of 4,000 low-income housing stock in the city of Ogden, over and above what we normally need. We really need to take in the poor and huddled masses in Ogden. And it has become very different because developers look at this and say, why would we invest in Ogden? You don't have the disposable income for us to even look at you. But as you've seen, as we work things out, people who will take the risk with us benefit from it because things start to happen. We have a new vision, a new mayor that took place. We had Mayor Godfrey, who started the movement, Mayor Caldwell, both completely different in personalities and the way they approach things, but consistent in the goals and objectives that they want to see happen in the community. Now we're focused in on what we feel are our assets. We're looking at the biking industry, outdoor recreation, those things that we can do with the ski resorts and the foothill mountain trails, and the same things that you have here in Moab. You have great resources. You got the 2 national parks that are very unique. Very few communities have that gathering spot. And what you do is those unique activities, and creating a variety of reasons why people come. I just want to run through, just looking where I'm at on time. Just talk about one of the aspects we realize is we can't just be on retail, we got to be looking at housing. As I mentioned, Ogden had a heyday. We had what we call the Millionaires Row of first-generation millionaires in Ogden that took advantage of the railroad and everything else to create their wealth. And we had these mansions, it was known as Jefferson Avenue. And what happened is, over time, of course, the rich folk moved out, the homes were converted to multiple units. This gives you an idea of some of the early buildings, what they look like, sketch and a photo, again, horse and buggy time. But those homes, when they converted, add-ons were made to them to become boarding houses, to take a house and make 13 apartments out of it, or 5 apartments out of it. Just cut up the houses, do add-ons to them that had no sense of the context of the building. Eccles Avenue, the kids of the millionaires moved up to Eccles Avenue. And this was during the 20s, so we had prairie-style buildings built here. And then the rest of East Bands with the Victorian-style houses and other things. But they all started to be in deplorable conditions for a variety of reasons. Economics is the key part. But then the market, as far as what could the market do, well, the market could only come in because of the low values, and manufactured home was the only option against rows of Victorian houses and everything else. And we said, that's not right. That's not how things should be. We need to start taking this neighborhood back and get it back to a place people want to be in. So we started looking at key things we could do. Now, different communities have different opportunities because of their status, either poverty levels or population with HUD grants, federal block money, taking advantage of all these different things. And we started to look at all the things we could do to start looking at the resources that may be available to us to retake the neighborhood and to develop what we call the Quality Neighborhood Initiative, saying, this is what we're about in this neighborhood. We want to bring back that quality. Even for the low-income housing, they deserve a better life than in some of the units. I told a story at lunchtime that some of the units would have people running a hose from the neighbor to provide the water for that unit. They'd run it through the window, put the hose through the window so they could fill the bathtub. Or else run an extension cord because they couldn't afford power. You had those type of situations going on in some of these units. But we wanted to create a space where people could live and be safe, and so we started to do transitions. We started making investments as a community into those neighborhoods. This is at Jefferson Avenue I talked about. We started making public infrastructure One of the things that we found is when we were redoing the street was the old trolley tracks underneath the street. So we exposed them and made that become the median to slow down traffic. Use the old rail tracks in the middle of the street, leave them there. To create now a sense of neighborhood, what could be. Public improvements of sidewalk, of lighting, so the neighborhood would feel safe. Then started to buy some key houses and using the block grant money to take back multiple units and restore them back to single-family homes and offer incentives to buyers that if you live here for at least 5 years, you'll get a free grant of $10,000 or $5,000, depending on what the income level was, to go towards the house payment and give you low-interest loans for remodeling. Some homes we had to tear down. And in this case, the person with their own money built the home. We gave them some deferred money for a second mortgage, but then they built this new home to fit in with that neighborhood. We took this mansion, which was one of the Eccles mansions, took off the front facade, and we found out that those columns would only be held by a couple nails at the top. We could actually push the base out and it started to swing out. Restore that back. Again, take off the addition that was done in the 1950s and restore that home back to its area. Again, with the idea of home ownership, and this is the interior of that home. One of the things we found is generally people would do all sorts of things to the exterior, but the interior, all the woodwork, that was generally still there. Even though they may have covered it up with something, they didn't take it out, which was key to why people would want to come into these homes and remodel them. Again, showing another example of the renovation work that took place. This is the Wattis home. And the Wattis family, they had moved on, they all lived in New York, and then they realized what was going on and said, this is our family home. Let's do something about it. They came back and invested $1 million and restored this Prairie style home into its original condition. And they use it now. I know we may call it a vacation rental, but they use this now as their own vacation rental when they come down to ski. They have a caretaker who lives there all the time, but this is the Wattis family gathering home. And even taking some old, what we call the villas, some apartment housing in that Eccles district. One of the neighbors bought the property, we gave them a loan, and they restored these 6 units into the housing we see there now. And again, changes that take place to homes. Just going to kind of run through some of these slides. One of the things we also had to do was work with the school district. Because in our revitalization of that neighborhood, we had what we call the mothership. This was D Elementary School, and it was the design in the 60s, the idea of no walls, one big open classroom for all grades, which was a disaster. But any of you who have been school teachers for elementary, you'd realize what I'm talking about when you have elementary kids and no walls between you and any other teacher. But that's how this functioned. The school districts realized it wasn't functioning well. They said, okay, we're going to build a new school. We're going to build it on our property that we own, where our administration buildings are, and it'll be out of the neighborhood. We said, no, you can't do that. A school is key to neighborhood vitality. If we can work with you and get you a decent spot where you build a school in the middle of the neighborhood so it can be an identity. And it took a lot of arm twisting, but finally they said, yeah, okay, we'll look at that. So we came up with a plan. We said, what we'll do to help you in land cost, we're going to let your open space be our public park. We're going to close the road, so you see that area in yellow. We said, this will be your school site. We're going to close the road, and Liberty Park can be your playground area. You don't have to acquire that much land. And of course, they weren't skilled at acquiring land, so we stepped in and acquired land for the school district, and then they paid for it. But then we also had to work with other owners. So you see where the old school is, the big round, as I said, the mothership, and move it over. We also had to deal with then their concept of, well, for this school to be here, you know, we need to figure out how we're going to park. But we don't want to approach anyone else because we've already acquired this property. So let us acquire that middle piece. You see, it's a large parking lot for a church. We said, if we can work with a church and do some land trading, let that be your front entrance. So come off the street and create an entrance to the school. Again, it took a while to get them convinced of that idea, but the school opened this year. There it is, Liberty Park as the connection to it. The school has 40% of their population coming to the school outside of the Ogden School District. This is what they call a magnet school. And it is working with science, technology, and engineering. And the program we introduced has now got people coming in from other areas to go to school here, where this is the poorest performing school in the state. We're going to see dramatic changes take place. That's all because we said, you've got to be sensitive, you've got to be part of the community. We can't work at opposite ends to build community. We have to be in this together. And so, this is, I went blank on the name now. Oh, New Bridge, yeah, New Bridge, that's the name of the school. It's right there. We had them come in and do some other things. We actually started building houses because no developers would still touch Ogden in terms of there was no value in it. We could not get a return on our investment. We said, baloney. We can build houses and we can sell these houses and we can drive the market price up. And we started doing that. Whether it be in a lower income area, smaller homes, whether it be in more of the Victorian area, these are all homes we built and then sold before they were built, where no developer believed it could ever happen. We also had to change the value. The appraisers didn't know how to appraise this for loans, because there's no comparables like that in Ogden. And we had to change those dynamics of how people thought about things. And whether it be the prairie style, as this one, or the other stuff that I showed you. And then finally, we did another development project. This is along the Ogden River. Justin's going to talk about the Ogden River itself and how these two work together. But as we looked at this area, this was right off the edge of downtown. I always like to tell the story when we were doing the survey here. It was fall, and some gentleman had a deer hanging out on the front porch as he was skinning it. And, you know, this is downtown Ogden. This wasn't out somewhere 20 miles away. This was downtown, and he's hanging a deer out, skinning it. That's kind of what was going on. These homes, some of them had no foundations, but they were built many, many years ago. We did a redevelopment project in this area where we basically took, in our plan, we said this is going to be one of the dense areas of the community. We're going to change the density. We created a redevelopment district with an idea of what could happen. And then we tried to attract developers. And we spent 4 years with people throwing out a plan, and then they do the economics and say it's not going to work. So finally we stepped in and said, fine, we're going to show you how it can work. We took a block, 12 acres, cleared it off, that red area, cleared it all off, and started development. We attracted people who thought they would not come to Ogden. One of our first people was a bike company. We got them. They started right on the corner of the river and Washington Boulevard. Then gradually restaurants and others came who were literally looking for other places, but we had to go out and say, look, consider us before you go out somewhere else. And they said, they did it. They had some of their most successful businesses happening at this location where the market told them, avoid Ogden, don't come here. Because people wanted something, but it didn't show up in numbers. But once it was built, it attracted people there. We had to go through some painful processes. We, took out a loan to acquire properties. We knew we couldn't do the whole thing, so we kind of did strategic planning of what properties we buy. Those areas in the orange were our properties, and then developers started buying the other properties. But we had our points in key areas saying, you can't move forward unless you buy our property. And to buy our property, you need to do the development this way. And so we started creating leverage because we had key spots that they couldn't really make it work without our property and our participation to help them. Again, we had problems with one developer. He bought the property and then he just let everything go vacant. And so people, again, that confidence, oh yeah, what's going to happen now? Well, let's take our shopping cart and we'll look and see. Then we started to say, okay, no one else is coming up with a good plan. We tried to do it with the private sector. Let us come up with a plan. So we hired a firm out of Pittsburgh, Urban Design Associates. We did a 4-day workshop with the property owners, with potential developers, and with city officials to come up with what could happen in this space. key of it is connection, tying things together with all the things that we have going on. Everything's got to fit together in the end to make it work properly. You can't just do a piece here, a piece here, a piece here, and have real success. They've got to start to join together, and that's what was taking place here. We developed the site plan. We developed criteria for what buildings would look like, typology of buildings, and what type of things, and given the developers a choice of what could happen in those spaces, but said they got to still fit within this typology. Well, there's a learning curve. When our first developer, this is what his architect came up with. We said, that isn't even close to the guidelines. So he came back and did this and said, no, it's still not close to the guidelines. There's the final product of what happened for the townhome area that we wanted to build. The funny thing about it, I don't know if any of you have driven up north yet, but when you come through Spanish Fork Canyon, these townhomes here now exist in Spanish Fork at the mouth of the canyon. And again, this was, what I found out is the architect, who we had to go through all this rigmarole to finally get to this point, and all the kicking and fighting that got to that point. Now he's taking that design because he did it. He's selling it to developers in Utah County, and they're building it without any problem. But he was kicking and screaming to try to get to that final point. So the townhomes in the first place. So this shows you what that area looked like where those townhomes were built. 2001, that's what it looked like. Townhomes under construction, townhomes built. And now what that street looks like with those homes there. And then the second phase being the apartments. Again, this is the area where the apartment buildings were built. This is what it looked like prior. Under construction now. New buildings, apartment buildings. And what the street looked like then and what it looks like today. We're going to take an intermission for a minute, and Justin's going to be talking about a couple other projects. So just 5 minutes to stretch your legs, get a drink, and then we'll continue on.